The preseason prediction. Look at me, so smug.
You don't got a clue in the fucking world.
Boy, I was wrong. To the point where you blokes are making TikToks about it, trolling me. In 16th place, the wooden spooners of the 2022 season will be the North Queensland Cowboys. Look, let's compare my predictions from the preseason to now. I already have some second-hand embarrassment, not gonna lie. In 16th place, it's the infamous one. I thought it was going to be the North Queensland Cowboys at the year, and I honestly can't think of a successful team that has put $1 million in the centres. I don't think I could have predicted it any poorer. From 16th place to 3rd and a prelim final, I was well off. Dearden has gone on to have a breakout year, stepping up as one of the best young halves in the competition, contributing to a State of Origin winning Maroon side at just 21 years of age. Townsend, on the other hand, has slotted in perfectly for the Cowboys, becoming exactly what North Queensland needed, controlling the side with his effective kicking game. I was not the only one criticising Townsend's pickup, as he hadn't had much recent success, but he's proved every one of us insanely wrong. Valentine Holmes at $1 million also doesn't seem too bad now. He's been one of their best, dynamic in both attack and defence. They couldn't ask for much more from him. Nanai, Cotter, Robson, or Taumalolo, the list really goes on. There really aren't enough plaudits to give to this side, but hey, at least I can take credit for the Jeremy Nanai season. The Doggies, I would say, have exceeded expectations. After a round 1 win against the Cowboys, they would go on to lose their next 6 straight. This would put their record at 1-7, and it looked like another hopeless year for the Doggies. But they would turn things around. Big performances mid-year against the Eels and Roosters show that they are capable on their day to match it with the big hitters. In terms of signings, their recruits have done well. After slow starts for both Addo-Carr and Burton, they played at an elite level in their respective positions for the remainder of the year. The emergence of Matt King and Jeremy Marshall King were nice surprises this year, as Matt has locked down the lock role and Marshall King would win the club's Player of the Year award and is moving on next year to the Dolphins, but that blow should be softened by the arrival of Reid Marty next year. Their big issue remains their forwards. Tavita Pangai Jr. did not step up this year and the rest of the pack really struggled. Kickout may bring that spark, but they are a long way off when it comes to their forwards. A good season overall, but definitely some room for improvement. In the 14th spot I had the Newcastle Knights, and they would finish in 14th.
A great success!
It's my first win of the video with this side. 2 rounds in, it looked like the Knights were going to be spectacular. And then a calamitous collapse would follow. I mean, it was bad. Big loss after big loss, disciplinary issues, a team dividing rift that led to the resignation of a trainer, and a coach that doesn't seem to have the players behind him. Not many clubs did it tougher than the Newcastle Knights in 2022. After a strong start, Clifford's form would fall off a cliff. He was unable to find a reliable halves partner either. With the 3rd worst attack and the 2nd worst defence in the competition, their side really was woeful. In saying this, their shining lights have to be their outside back trio of Dominic Young, Edric Lee and Dane Gagai. Dominic Young was the club's biggest surprise, scoring 14 tries and totalling 15 line breaks. Young at this point looks like a potential star, but the Knights are going to need more from their playmaking positions. They're going to have to sign someone or find something. They are in dire straits. In the 13th spot, I originally had the West Tigers. They would eventually finish 16th as the Wooden Spooners. Now this is the bottom of the barrel for any team in 2022. The West Tigers were a grand total of not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 wins. Possibly some bias with my preseason predictions, as not many expected the Tigers to be that far off the bottom, but I think even the biggest skeptics would agree the Tigers under-delivered in 2022. I mean, where do we start? The 72-6 loss, the 55-10 loss, the on-field breakdowns, the firing of Madge mid-season, the players who sign with the club don't even want to play here, and even when they did win, they didn't. The team just sucks. It's plain and simple. The Tigers would finish the year with the worst attack and the 2nd worst defence in the entire competition. The club's best was Joe Offahen-Gowie by a country mile, the only consistent piece in the whole squad. A new centre of excellence plus the return of Tim Sheens, Benji Marshall and Robbie Farrell will hopefully do something for the club. This was surely rock bottom for the West Tigers. In the 12th spot, originally I had the Brisbane Broncos. They would end up finishing 9th on the table. Peaking at 4th at one point in round 19, it looked like my original prediction would embarrass me. Lucky for me, the Brisbane Broncos tend to rely heavily on one player, and this would lead to their downfall. As much as I love bagging the Broncos, we can't forget how off the pace they were a year ago. Reynolds was one of the best buys of the year. They may have found their young and explosive halves partner in Ezra Mam, and finally we saw an outstanding season by Wally Lewis Medal winner Patrick Carrigan. The 4-week suspension to Carrigan in round 20 was the turning point for the Broncos season, and it showed how important he is to the club. Their defense again proved to be their biggest issue, conceding considerably more than any other side in the top 8. A poor end to the year for sure, but I think the Broncos will be good in the long run. In the 11th spot, I originally had the New Zealand Warriors. They would finish in 15th. A disappointing season yet again for the Wars. That 70-10 loss against the Storm epitomised their season. Very, very far off the pace. After that thumping, they would lose their next 8 from 10, with 2 of those wins coming from their return back to Mount Smart Stadium. As predicted in the preseason, there is no real playmaking in the side, and it's fair to say the Johnson pickup has not really paid off. Whether it was Egan, Harris Tavita, Volkman or Arcee in the halves, the club had very little in attack. In fact, they had the second worst attack and the worst defence in the entire league. Outside of Curran, Harris, Aitken and Fanua Blake, there isn't much quality in their forwards. Walsh was halfway out the door the whole year, and it could be seen in his play. A permanent return to Mount Smart Stadium may turn the fortunes around for the club. I hope the best for you guys. In the 10th spot, it's the St. George Illawarra Dragons, and I predicted them to finish 10th. And they finished 10th.
You all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
Yep, who's laughing now? My second exact prediction of the video. For a team that hovered around the 10th spot for the entire year. On paper, the side isn't great, especially in the forwards. They seem to struggle tremendously in the middle. The brilliance of Ben Hunt, who is on the cusp of a Dally M season, and the emergence of Talatau Amon really made the difference in keeping them competitive. 10th is a fair indicator of where the side is, capable of beating the sides below them consistently, whilst proving no match for the finals teams. The club's number one priority is to tie down Hunt for sure, to a long-term deal, as he was spectacular in 2022. Griffin's misuse of the youngsters is a concern. Sloan seems out of sorts. Sullivan can't find any consistent game time, as their young core, which is one of the best in the league, isn't being given the opportunity. The constant internal rumblings at the club hasn't helped. It just seems like there's something off at the Dragons. In the preseason, I projected the Titans to come 9th. They would finish in the 13th spot. I was well off with this one, and it's lucky that the Titans even finished in 13th, getting those 2 wins in the final 2 rounds and just scraping it on point differential. The Titans were labelled inconsistent in 2020 and 2021. At least this year we can say they were consistently shit. The releasing of Jamal Fogarty may be one of the worst decisions made over the past off-season. The young spine of Campbell, Brimson and Sexton did not flourish and were desperate for some more experience. Tino Fa'asuamaleaui was the side's best, a consistent and strong leader, easily the club's best piece of business in recent memory. Beau Fermor overshadowed his more expensive counterpart in David Fifita, and it was a very poor season for the once heralded star. Jojo Fifita was really their only shining lights in the back, with this as an area that I think the club should highlight. A lot to work on for Holbrook's side. If you're enjoying this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. 93% of my viewers aren't subscribed. Are
you serious right now, bro?
In the preseason, I would predict the 8th spot for the Canberra Raiders, and they would finish in 8th. For a lot of the 2022 season for the Canberra Raiders,
not looking good, bruv.
Sitting in 15th by round 7, there was little to no hope of the team making the finals, but they would have a stunning turnaround. I mean, there was points where they were playing like
We got a dog.
and it seemed Ricky may be out the door. Thankfully for the Green Machine fans, they have turned it around, and much of the plaudits have to go to their big man Joe Tarpany and Josh Papali'i, who have dominated the middle of the park. Tarpany was the star of the side, recapturing his form that seemed to be lost only a year ago. Although the Raiders just scraped into the finals, they deserved to be there, with their turn in form well aligned with the arrival of Jamal Fogarty, who seemed like the harvest partner that Jack Whiten was looking for the entire year. Injuries hampered the Raiders early, but I think the end of year play showed what they are capable of when healthy. Their Storm finals upset capped off what was a solid season for the Raiders. In the preseason, I had the Cronulla Sharks finishing 7th. They would end up finishing 2nd. Although the Sharks would bow out in the second round of the finals, it was a clear turnaround for a side that was led by the wet hair enthusiast Nico Hines, having an almost MVP level season. Totaling 21 try assists and 29 line break assists, the bloke was a demon, and is in for a real shout at the Dally M Award. Matt Moylan would find his form in his best year for the club since 2018, playing 24 games. A great story for a guy who looked like he was on the verge of being out the league. New recruits McInnes and Finucane both played their roles superbly. Coach Craig Fitzgibbon exceeded all expectations in his debut season. Where many thought that there would be growing pains, the Sharks comfortably placed themselves in the upper echelon of the competition. The club's next step is to turn those wins into some finals form and potentially a premiership. In 6th, I predicted the Manly Seagulls. They would end up finishing 11th.
What's this? Don't touch that. That's fragile.
That clip from my NRL Stereotypes video epitomises what the Manly Seagulls are. They're a one-man team. It honestly reminds me of the 07 Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James. When Turbo is healthy, the team is electric. A top 8 team that is capable of more. Without him, they are toothless, losing games to the Titans and Bulldogs to end the year. The Pride jersey incident was the final nail in the coffin for the team, as they went winless in their final 6 games. It clearly divided the club, which was a pity as the team fought hard to stay in finals contention up until that point. DC started in Turbo's absence, doing what he has done for over a decade now in the NRL, whilst Jake Trbojevic was a workhorse defensively monstering the middle. Questions need to be asked of young guns Josh Schuster and Jason Saab, 2 talented individuals who have fallen down to earth after excellent 2021 campaigns. The Seagulls looked very far removed from their 2021 prelim. I initially predicted the Parramatta Eels would finish 5th, they would end up finishing 4th, and find themselves in a grand final. A prediction that many others predicted as well was the Parramatta Eels finishing in or around the 4th spot. But I didn't see many predictions about the Parramatta Eels going all the way to the grand final. Only a few weeks ago, Brad Arthur had some haters, but look at the guy now. The Eels have had a few hiccups. The field goal loss against the Tigers and the demolition job against the Bulldogs had them looking like they were pretenders yet again. A regular season double over reigning premiers, Penrith, showed that they can match it though on their day, and right now it seems like the Eels have hit their stride at the right time. The securing of the top 4 was huge for them, and even with a loss against the Panthers in the qualifying finals, Parramatta should not be discouraged. Moses, Gutherson and Brown are an elite spine and have showed it for most of 2022. Their flat style of play that relies heavily on the forwards continues to work wonders, as Paulo, Campbell-Gillard, Papali'i and Madison have been immense. A special shout out must go to Sean Lane though, who has turned his form around tremendously, going from 13 offloads in 2021 to 28 this season, with an increase as well in his average run meters from 106 to 130. Insane. The losses against poor sides, or the inevitable loss of players like Papali'i and Marnie, do cause some concern, but that can all be wiped over with a big grand final win. As their championship window is closing, they need to do it right now. Subscribe and press that notification button now. I've got a Parramatta Eels documentary coming this weekend. In the 4th spot, I thought it was going to be the South Sydney Rabbitohs. They would end up finishing 7th. The Rabbitohs, aka their Trell Mitt show, came home strong after a slow to mediocre start in the middle of the year. Losing the likes of Adam Reynolds, Dane Gagai and Jaden Sewer, many expected the Rabbitohs to maybe even fall out of the 8 or be towards the bottom of the 8. A lot of pressure was put on Lachlan Ilias' shoulders, and after copping a heap of criticism to start the year, Lachlan turned things around and was solid to end his rookie year. Those growing pains at the start of the season would hurt the side though, as their 7th place finish meant that they had to take the long road through the finals, which proved to be too much. Cameron Murray was again their star forward, but was followed closely by Tavita Totola and Jai Arrow, who were excellent. Their biggest weakness are their wingers. Both Milne and Paulo struggled for any consistency on their wings, and it's a hole that the club needs to fill if they are to take that next step. Overall, a prelim exit with a rookie coach after the loss of some key players and the master coach, Wayne Bennett, isn't something to frown upon as a Rabbitohs fan. In the 3rd spot, I projected it to be the Sydney Roosters. They would finish 6th. Finish it off, guys. My final prediction is I think the Sydney Roosters are going to win it all. It's going to be a Melbourne Storm versus Sydney Roosters grand final. I was obviously way off with my predictions, but you wouldn't have put it past the Roosters to go all the way to another premiership after their 8 straight wins. Only an insane elimination final that included 7 sin bins would stop the Roosters in what was a disappointing way to end their year. It was only round 17 though, where the club would find itself in 10th spot, 2 wins under 500, and with a real chance of missing the finals. Tedesco would lead the way yet again, providing another superstar season, whilst Kiri and Walker gelled towards the season's end, and Suali'i would have his breakout year that many predicted. Joey Manu was outstanding wherever he was needed on the field, and the pickup of Matt Lodge would coincide with that 8-game winning streak, a masterstroke Forward depth and an organising hooker seem to be what the Roosters were lacking. It's a question to whether Brandon Smith can be that guy. Next season, they're going to need to be more consistent throughout the year if they're to avoid that elimination final, which was their downfall this year. And in second, I projected it would be the Penrith Panthers. They would finish first and are in the grand final. The boys at the foot of the mountain have been putting their foot on everyone's throat this year, and no one in the NRL is breathing. Here we were thinking that we would have another fall off after losing Burton, Capewell and Naden, but the factory of young talent just never stops. And what they have achieved so far is truly amazing. There are no holes in this side, from the spine to the forwards and backs. There is origin level talent throughout the team. Nathan Cleary has again been the premier half in the competition, whilst Isaiah Yeo has been a monster linking up play with his silky hands and rarely ever missing a tackle. Leota and Fisher Harris always put their side on the front foot, and it really looks like the side hasn't taken a step back at all in 2022. Going into the grand final this Sunday, the side looks in peak form. The only question comes from their side next year, without Coruscant, who turned the game around in the prelim after coming on, and Kikau, who's an incredibly damaging hole runner. Those questions are for next year though. For now, the Panthers look set for another premiership to go back to back. In first, I projected the Melbourne Storm. They would finish in 5th place and be eliminated in the elimination final. I don't see the Storm losing more than 4 games this year. Possibly the worst prediction I've had on this list outside of the Cowboys. The Storm would already have 4 losses by round 16 and look nowhere near premiership pace. Many clubs would consider their year a good year, but in cyborg land of Melbourne, this is not good enough. It's pretty disappointing actually. Injuries definitely hit the Storm harder than the majority of the NRL, as their outside backs were heavily depleted, but the club hadn't exited the finals in week 1 since 2014. The loss of Pappenhausen and Welch cannot be understated. Both are elite in their respective positions when healthy, and it looked like they were scrambling the entire season to fill that hole, which they just couldn't. The Storm aren't as bad as many have argued though, but the loss of Brandon Smith, the Bromwich brothers and Felice Kafusi really hurts. Both Hughes and Munster would carry their sides to wins all year long, but by the end of the season they just ran out of steam, which showed in their 3 consecutive losses to end the year. Overall, outside of a couple howlers, I don't think it was too bad. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. I've got an Eels documentary coming out this weekend and a lot more NRL content to come. Thank you guys for watching, and bye for now.